welcome to the fourth edition of the Nua Collective podcast. We are delighted to keep this podcast going, and we've had some great response to our previous episodes. We hope you watched them or listened to them even on our streaming channels through Spotify, Google Podcasts, and the Apple Podcast Play Store also. So tonight's edition is going to be looking at fear and the fear of creativity. And we're going to tackle this together with Roberto Garcia, also known as Alkalart, and Saoirse O'Sullivan, both members of our Nua Collective. And we are just so happy to have them with us this evening. So we're going to start off with Saoirse. Saoirse, can you just tell us, how are you getting on with your practice? What are you working on at the moment?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So at the moment, I am looking at Irish landscape, primarily working with oil and acrylic on 3D canvas. Right now, I suppose, because we're in the 5K limit, I am kind of just taking in my own surroundings from kind of walks and runs that I'm going on a daily basis. I am kind of from the countryside, so it's a lot of rural scenes that I'm looking at. A lot of my work right now is kind of old buildings that have been abandoned or old farmyards have kind of been the tone for the moment, and kind of just pulling out kind of a surrealist kind of approach in my painting. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Cool. That's brilliant. And I think, as people can see through the collective website, that your work, it is very much that the colors jump off the screen, and it's even more incredible to see them in real life. But they do, you do get the sense of the colorful landscape that's there. I think that's really cool. Roberto, how are you getting on? What are you working on at the moment?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. I'm working at the moment on a piece that I started a while ago. It's based, well, it's kind of a mix of different thoughts, maybe feelings. The topic I'm dealing with on this painting is kind of, well, is religion and society. So I'm exploring the concept of religion from my point of view, with a kind of a kitsch pop twist. Yeah, it's not finished. I'm not sure how it's going to be looking, but I like it. It's been creative, and I think it's got some of the elements I've been playing with in the past as well. I like to play with a collage of elements and ideas, and kind of mix them all up with some nice colors. I explore with colors as well a lot. Yeah.
Cool. So you have that similar to Saoirse in that you love using color. No, I love color myself. It's just it really gives us a really nice positive injection, especially in these otherwise dark times. So I suppose that kind of nicely segues into my question about fear. And you don't seem to, either of you, have fear in what you're working on at the moment, but has there ever been an element of fear that you have experienced personally as artists?
Yeah, I totally relate to that, because I think, especially, well, it's even from the days I was studying art in Crawford, I remember even feeling the fear of open up. So I remember I was very kind of concerned about even showing my feelings, expressing my feelings, or showing details about my life, So that was quite a process for me to break through, through that. And then after college, I think when I started teaching, the fear kind of came back again, but kind of in another sense. I was kind of afraid of being judged, afraid of what students will say about my work. Would they like it? Would it be considered good? Field. So that judgmental fear that was quite present. I'm still present in a sense. I think we artists, we are the first to judge ourselves. Yeah, I think I can. kind of learned to handle the fear. I think I'm better at it. I think I'm more used to handle judgment, my own judgment, even. So, but yeah, it's a process really, and I try to push myself more, just to kind of challenge myself, because I think it's a good exercise, to push yourself to do things that might be a bit bold, more bolder, and it gives you more ability to handle criticism and judgment.
But also maybe a better result as well in what you produce.
Yeah, definitely. I think that as an artist, you have to do it. I think you have to push yourself and challenge you in many ways. I think in a sense that's a big part of being an artist. But of course, every time that you challenge yourself, new fears will come. Because imagine that you've been painting for years, and then suddenly you're doing an installation that is in the middle of the street. You're going to feel fear. You'll be like, people will think, why I'm doing this if I'm a painter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's present.
That's an interesting point you make about that, because if the people have these preconceived notions that if you're a photographer and you suddenly go back painting, even though painting is maybe something that you wanted to do, but you are known for being a photographer, then why is he doing that, or why is she doing that? And having those connotations to what your practice might have been or would be, and when you want to make a change, but people are saying that, well, that's not what you do. And it's like, well, there's change. We can change. We can change who we are, what we want to do. Saoirse, do you agree with Roberto? Have you got similar experiences with that?
Yeah, of course. Like, I feel like artists were always going to have this emotion of fear when we're starting something new, or maybe in project work, whatever it is. But I suppose like fear, it's putting yourself out of your comfort zone, and art is a huge platform for that. But it's also, when you think of fear within art, it's also something quite exciting. There's a quote from Zig Ziglar, and he said, "Forget everything and run, or face everything and rise, and the choice is yours." And I think as artists, when we are approaching something new, it's kind of just facing it and kind of trusting the process. I suppose it's probably the same for you and for a lot of people. It's kind of just persevering. Sometimes we'll go through like an abundance of emotions when we're making a piece, but it's trying to overcome each step to get to the point that you want to be in. So it is a learning curve all the time.
All for the greater good, though, I feel. And from what both of you were saying there, absolutely endorsing that, that it is all for the greater good. If you look at, and I feel this way, about that perseverance in anything that we do, let alone creativity or the creative arts, and pushing past the difficulties and pushing past the hardships that we all have to deal with on a daily basis. Once we overcome them, there is 9 times out of 10 going to be a brighter result than what we started out with, or what we were experiencing while we were embracing the difficulties or going through them. Have you kind of ever experienced that yourselves, or would you endorse that yourselves? Saoirse, what do you think about that?
Obviously, it always depends on maybe what medium you're working with and things like that. But I think like if something is quite terrifying, but also exciting, you should definitely just go for it. And regardless of how maybe you're feeling, again, it's the process and how you build up from that, which is the most important aspect for myself personally anyway.
Where do you feel, and this is a question for either of you, maybe Roberto, where do you feel that this fear might stem from? Where do you think that it might have started?
I actually believe it might come even from our childhood, when we were saying, like, even like when we were a child and we were playing with paint and with or even painting on the wall, messing, and then maybe our parents came and say, "Don't do that. What you're doing. You're messing up. That's wrong. So that kind of our weird side, which I suppose art is kind of can be also an expression of this of your kind of weird side, or um, any other faces of your personality. I think that was suppressed. I think as a child that might have been suppressed, and I think then it's quite difficult, to overcome that feeling. I think in that sense you kind of expect that from others, expect this, oh, what you're doing, that's wrong, that's a mess.
When you're told something that is wrong at that very impressionable stage, it's very difficult to overcome that when you become a teenager or even an adult, especially if you haven't gone through it or if you haven't tried to challenge it at that point. And I think when we do go to our adult self and we want to kind of engage with creativity or the arts or something, there's a block there, and trying to kind of get past that block is a difficulty. Would you have any kind of advice for people who maybe are afraid or fearful of picking up a paintbrush or even drawing a little sketch on a piece of paper? Would you have any kind of advice to them on how they could maybe overcome that fear?
Myself, I think, I know this might sound a bit I don't know, maybe strange, but you kind of have to put logic in aside. I think you just have to kind of see it as an expression without too much analysis. I think even if you are learning to draw or what, just consider the possibility that even just a shape or a line or just a bit of cross-hatching, that can be something, So and I think that's the beauty of it as well, because it liberates you as well, and I think that can be very beneficial, if you explore that a bit, So kind of, yeah, of course, there'll be always some logic, and that's of course, but in a sense, you have to kind of put it aside for a while and just try, and just try it away, Yeah.
Do you agree, Saoirse?
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, when they think creatively, they're kind of afraid of like failure, and like if you think of like a test maybe growing up and you failed, and there's kind of a negative feeling from that. But I think as creative individuals, we have our own sense of like reality, and it's kind of just shifting from that reality of failure into your own reality of, your own creative thinking or way of looking at it. So it's kind of just trying to shift from the fear or the failure aspect into something more positive, or something that would drive you further, rather than focusing on the fear.
I agree completely with both of you. The overthinking element that we all create in our minds, and we're creators whether we like to think it or not, but we create these thoughts in our minds that we can't look past. And sometimes if we just stop thinking and just do, and not think about the consequences of what we do, I mean, maybe not apply this to kind of something in life where you need to think about your actions before you do them. But in creativity, there is an element where you should stop thinking through the creative process and just see what comes subconsciously and see what elapses once you put that pen on a paper, or even a marker or a paintbrush or a sponge. It doesn't matter. Just kind of let it out. So that kind of brings me, because both of you are kind of giving lots of advice there. And your advice is crucial because you are both educators. And you, Saoirse, as an educator, tell us firstly who do you teach? What do you teach?
So I'm a qualified secondary school art, craft and design teacher, and I teach first years to 6 years, leaving certs, teaching young people. It's a great platform to be at. kind of leading them on into maybe third level, or just even their own way of thinking creatively wherever life may bring them.
Do you find at that level that you have students who would fight you in your plea to creativity?
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, you have a huge range of different age groups, you know, and some, I suppose, year groups would come in and be really engaged. Others would be more excited to see their friends and have a chat, you know, and they'd challenge you maybe on different aspects that you would be looking at that day. A big thing that I would look at is I like to let the students decide what medium they like to work with. So say some students would say, Miss, like, I find it really hard to draw. And you're kind of trying to maybe push that out, why it is that that student doesn't like drawing. Perhaps they're really good with their hands and they're fantastic at making something out of sculpture, or it's something visual like photography. So it's kind of grabbing hold of what the student favors, and letting them explore that as well, because in secondary school it's just a glimpse of what they're going to maybe grab hold of later on in life as well. So you're trying to just give them all an opportunity to think in a certain way in kind of an artistic form, because you only have them for 40 minutes majority of the time.
Yeah, I think what's incredible about that is that you have such power, and art teachers and art educators and art influencers across the world have such power at that age. Give them the tools to be able to see past the fact that, okay, if I can't draw, or if I don't like to draw, okay, well, if you don't want to do drawing, there is a piece of clay there that you can sculpt. And as you said, there's so many different mediums that you can look into, and so many different ways you can express your creativity. And then as a result, overcome the fear of what might be put in place, from the fear of inability, and the fear of failure. And that is something that shouldn't be underestimated, is the power that you as a creative educator, a creative endorser, have such an incredible power to make sure that that's not dismissed. I think those who dismiss that, oh, you can't draw, or you can't do this at such a young age, such an impressionable age, could really damage their interest in it going forward.
Yeah, it's a huge platform, really. Like, it's all about the way you think about it as well. I think if students come in with the mentality that they're not good at art, or it's just something that they're not in tune to, it's kind of just trying to lead them in such a direction that perhaps maybe art is not something that you love, but it might be something that you could use in your maths class or in engineering, or, you know, it is just giving them the most that you can within those few minutes that you have with them.
Roberto, do you feel the same? Like, Roberto, who do you teach, or what levels do you teach at?
I had experience teaching kids while I was doing my PhD and my teaching practice in the school. But yeah, mostly I've been teaching adults. But the approach is quite the same as Shersa said just previously. I totally agree with her that I mean, you have to kind of show different mediums, avenues to express themselves. That art, it's everything but rigid, everything, because you can pretty much play and use anything to create art, you know. So I think that's for me is a fantastic tool, you know, and it really works. And as an educator, and probably Shersa might agree on this as well. I think you have to kind of find the medium that might suit the individual, the student better. In my case, I teach oil painting. I know that's quite of can be a bit of a technical medium, but I always, because I teach beginners, I always explore style different different tools. So within oil painting, with that medium, I explore everything. And I put a lot of emphasis on the individual to just find his or her own style. But just with one medium, you can do a lot. You can experiment and explore many ways to express themselves. Just for expression, which is fantastic for creativity.
What would you say to an adult, Saoirse, who wants to maybe explore the creative side, but has a statement bet into their mind that they cannot because they were told otherwise? What would be your advice to encourage them to become that little bit more creative?
I suppose, firstly, I'd probably just say go for it. I think no matter what you do, like creativity, it takes courage. Use what you have, use the knowledge that you have. If they're looking at photographs that they're painting from, or if there's like an artist or someone online that they're maybe inspired by or they think is pretty cool, you're kind of like start from there, start where you are, see what it is that you like to work with. Is it color that you're fascinated with? Is it like form? Ask questions, look things up, but just try it out. There's no limits in art, so that's why it's kind of exciting and appealing for people. So yeah, just take a fun approach to it. That's what I'd say.
Roberto, have you any advice?
I think the fun approach always works. That's a very good advice. Yeah, definitely have fun. That's number one. I think you have to enjoy it. Even if you want to achieve some sort of mastery or some sort of technical ability, I mean, you have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy the process. And what I find important, and with this I relate to myself as well, to my art practice, is this disassociate yourself from the mental picture, the mental model that you have of what you want to achieve. So you have to kind of create a separation from the result of what you're doing. Basically, for instance, when I start a painting, I kind of have a kind of a mental model of I want, and I think most of us might have it, artists, even people that is just starting to do art, but you kind of you have to free yourself and be kind of flexible enough to allow the space to say it might not happen. I might not. Is more than likely it's not going to be exactly what you thought. Probably it will be quite different. The end result that you expected. So it's good to allow yourself that kind of liberty and freedom, and be flexible enough, with yourself, and enjoy as well, because as I don't know, you remember that our teacher, I think it was from the 80s, the one with the mad hair. What's his name?
Bob Ross.
Yeah, Bob Ross.
Yeah. Bob Ross.
Thanks very much, Saoirse. So as he said, and he had this fantastic point and line, I love happy accidents,
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic, and I think it really it makes it fun, when you can make a bit of a mess of what you're doing at sometimes, and not being obsessed with, the end result,
Just on that, I was looking at a guy called Dr. Rob Muller, and he just broke down creativity in 5 different ways. And just if someone was approaching art, I think these are really cool to just to look at. Just like what you were saying there, Roberto, just to the flexibility in art, a mindset that suggests that there are more than a single answer or a solution, so that like it's really free. A sense of intense curiosity is massive. Creative thinkers are fascinated with the world around them. A positive attitude is massive. Creative thinker. Strong motivation and determination as well of what it is that you're making. And then just the last one is fearlessness, which is taking away from the fear, I suppose. Highly creative people tend to believe in the value of the idea that they come up with. And I think it's really grabbing that value from the fear and what the outcome would be. So yeah, they're just different approaches again. When to look at creativity, you know, that it is meant to be something really positive and fun to work out.
Just to bring in the playfulness, as we've said, just bring that playfulness in. I think I'd like to add something to that list as well, is just to give yourself time, to do it, and just let yourself be in a space and let yourself sit in a space and allow yourself to be creative. I think that's something that we all have in abundance during this time, is that we do have time. So it's important that we can just spend time and just allow ourselves to be creative. Yeah, no, I think both of you have really kind of opened up our eyes a little bit as to how we can kind of overcome the fear of creativity. And I think while we want to overcome it, it's important that sometimes we embrace it as well, and embrace the potential positiveness that does come from fear, and saying, okay, I am afraid of this, but also if I overcome this and embrace the fact that there's fear there, that there can be a positive outcome from it. And that in itself is positive innately. I suppose we're living in fear at the moment with the ongoing crisis that we're dealing with, i.e. the pandemic, this coronavirus. And I suppose we all can relate to that fear that is associated with that. Saoirse, do you think that this has any sort of connection?
Yeah, I just think fear and creativity go hand in hand. And in today's world, we are captured with the emotion of fear of the coronavirus, which is really strong right now. But regardless of the current climate, people are driving on, thriving, blossoming within the unknown, with the hope of life to get better and more profound than ever before. One thing that has come out of this pandemic is that life is fragile and life is temporary. But one thing is true, that hope is alive, and hope is living within creativity, which I think is huge. Creativity is a form of communication without ouncing a word, but enlightening an environment through colour, composition, and perhaps a new beginning. And I think that's just something we should grab a hold of, that just with the topic, taking the fear out of creativity, that there is a hope that comes from kind of the art platform. And that's just something really exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think when we were putting the Nua Collective program together, that was something that really positively came out of the coronavirus, was that we needed an environment, albeit a virtual environment. We still needed something that we could maybe connect artists together, and it has done so on a global scale. There are people in our collective that are from about 7 or 8 different countries, and that's something we wouldn't have been able to do or maybe wouldn't have been something that we would have thought of before. And having this collective and being creative to create this collective has encouraged these collaborations, and it's hopefully encouraging people to continue working and to continue creating work, and giving them that encouragement, especially in a practice where we have to be very self-motivated. Roberta, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we have to be positive, and I believe this will bring positive changes as well. And I think this is also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to explore your inner self, in a sense, through art. I mean, you have time, you have a space at home, and of course now we can't really get out of the house that much. So maybe it's time to just try, give it a go, and just explore your creativity, because we all have it, to be honest, in one way or another, and it's quite positive once you start bringing that out. And for the Nua Collective and for artists in general, I think it's also very challenging, because now we have to kind of work in another environment, like it's internet, online. But that could be very interesting. That could be very fascinating as well. It's exciting to see what will be happening and what will come out of it. I think collaborate. We haven't really started to do really that much online. We haven't really started. It's now when we are starting to do collaborations. Maybe do collaborative art, online. So there are many. So I think it can be very positive as well. It can bring art to another level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think what's fantastic is that, like, as artists, when exhibitions had stopped happening and when the art world had and the arts world in general, the arts industry had collapsed as a result of the pandemic, there was a huge element of fear in artists because we didn't know what are we working towards, what is the point, I suppose, would be an argument or a statement that might come to mind. And finding something that is secure or something that will give you the encouragement to work towards something was very difficult and is very difficult, and hopefully that platforms like what we are doing will keep people working and keep creating new things. And I think that's something that we were excited to kind of share with you over the coming weeks, that hopefully we'll have some new work to share with everybody and to kind of keep that growing. That's fantastic, guys. I feel that we've really kind of covered some amazing ground there, and there's a lot to even kind of go into further detail with, which I think we will do over the coming weeks with our podcasts. But for now, I think we'll leave it there, and I'd like to thank both Saoirse and Roberto, aka Alkalart, who are artists from our Nua Collective cohort, and you can find their profiles on our Nua Collective website at www.nuacollective.ie, and you can check out Nua Collective on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, and on Apple Podcasts. And you can also find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on all of the social platforms. We're everywhere. We've got a social presence. Just go and follow and share and let everybody know about what we do. I hope that you can draw some inspiration. I think we both, all three of us have kind of spoke about that, about looking at the inspiration that you can get from other artists. And look at our artists. We've got 50 artists on our collective, all showcasing what it is that they do passionately through our website. And you can check out all of that work again at www.nuacollective.ie. Thank you both for joining us again. All I want to say at the end of this now is that you just be creative, that you embrace the creativity and embrace the fear and just let it all go. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.